Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello and welcome to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. You know how it goes. My name is Simon Miller and this is a pro wrestling podcast, potentially the only one in the entire world. Obviously not true. Now, I've already made one faux pas on this week's episode, and that is I put some washing on. I don't know if it's going to pick up or not, but hopefully you can't hear my my washing machine in the background. If you can, that's all it is. I'll do my best in post-production to get rid of it. I am a fool. I can't pause my my washing machine. It's like Dark Souls. Can't pause Dark Souls. They both suck. Anyway, it is Friday, therefore it's the Q&A portion of the podcast. If you'd ever like to ask a question, you just head over to Facebook, you search for Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, you join the group, and every now and then the thread will go up and you can add your question, and I will get to as many as I can. As always, I want to thank everyone for their support. Hopefully we're going to Spotify soon. I nagged them on Twitter yesterday and they got back to me, which was good, and pretended like I'd never submitted it. I've submitted it over and over again and they've never accepted. So hopefully it'll be on Spotify soon. But obviously I'm on Twitter at Simon316, YouTube channel, please subscribe, youtube.com/The Miller Report rules. Patreon.com/Simon316 is what makes all of this possible. So if you've got $1 to spare and you think, I'm going to throw $1 Simon's way, that makes my life a little bit easier and I appreciate it no end. I'll also, for the few people that have been asking about it, obviously I have entered the world of professional wrestling now. I am a professional wrestler. If you'd like to see me, I will be in Newcastle on the 17th of June for Defiant Wrestling. I also will be in Manchester when they do Stacked in September. Not September, that's in August, right? August 26th, I believe. And I will be... I can't talk about that one, actually. I keep that one silent. I'll also have a couple of shows in London and further down south soon. I will announce them as soon as I know I can announce them. So if you would like to come, I'll be one of there. And also on that note, I'm getting some merchandise made. I won't tell you what it is now. I'll keep it under wraps. I'm only doing a small run to begin with because I don't know if there's a demand for it. It is based on my wrestling persona, for lack of a better term, to give you a hint of what it is. And if it does do well, I've come up with a load of designs and I'm going to start selling them, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't know if anybody wants it, but I thought it was worth a shot given, well, you know, things seem to be ticking along all right. So I thought, well, let's pull the trigger and see what happens. But enough of that. I think that's it. Make sure you do check out the episode that we did on Wednesday, where we just talked about pretty much WWE having a slightly, what's the word I'm looking for? A slightly down week, I'll call it. I think mostly because they just needed to get to next week when they pulled the trigger on all the money in the bank stuff. But it was fine. It was okay. We talked about all the CM Punk stuff, so we've done that. I can't remember if he won when we did that podcast. My brain is a blur, but he did win. Still sucks that him and Colt Cabana still have to pay the money for all their... Isn't that crazy? If somebody sues you and you win, you can try and get the money you spent on lawyers back, but that's a whole other process. The law system is crazy, but that's neither here nor there. Otherwise, I know the NXT Download tournament is going on right now. I saw the Flash Morgan Webster had won a match. I haven't seen anything since then because I've been doing other things, you know, trying to make money so I don't die. And I don't believe... And we've got Dominion tomorrow as well. And we are going to be discussing... We have a special podcast next week. I'm going to record it on Tuesday for Dominion. So I will give you all my thoughts about that. And as usual, if you want to get all my thoughts on all of wrestling, you've got here. And you can go to What Culture Wrestling as well, which is a YouTube channel. Let's answer the question. Lee Ty is my man who sent me some very nice words about my second match the other day. And I appreciate that, Lee. I appreciate you taking the time. It meant a lot. What's your favourite Raw Rumble of all time? Well, it's probably, I know it's a standard cliched answer, but it probably is the 92 one when Ric Flair wins, especially these days, just because it's got that retro feel to it nowadays, and it reminds me of my childhood. Plus, it's a really good Raw Rumble, and the whole, you know, Bobby Heenan on commentary with, you know, just shouting from the rooftops that he wants Ric Flair to win is just great. The whole thing works so well. So I think probably that one. And also, I mean, I do like a lot of the Attitude Era Rumbles with Steve Austin winning, but again, that ties into where I was in my life at the time. And I know we have had some other good Rumbles since. Like, was it 2007 when Shawn Michaels did the whole I need to fight The Undertaker, and then he got knocked out and he just, you know, made the elimination process feel far more emotional than it ever had done. That was good. But I don't know. I always enjoy the Royal Rumble, even the bad ones. But they don't stand out as me as much as when I was a kid. And the 1992 one I just loved it. The whole thing with Flair coming in at 3 and going through to the end, and it was the best. I don't think it'll ever be topped, just because that's what nostalgia does. It's like one of my favourite video games is Ocarina of Time. There's probably better video games, but I was 14 years old, and it blew my brain. Callum Bartle, how would you split up the New Day if you had to? Because I would have Big E and Money in the Bank, and then have both Kofi and Woods turn heel and be like the Heiners. I don't know what the Heiners they were when they turned. What's the Heiners? I don't know what that is. But I've always said this, I wouldn't break up the New Day. I would keep them together, but break them up from a wrestling standpoint. So yeah, I would have New Day. I would have Big E going after the world title or in a singles feud. And you know, we still need tag teams in that SmackDown division. So I would have Woods and Kofi do that. But I think there's real potential there to have this as a team that's always together. They just happen to go off and do their own thing. I do think we got to that point as well. I do enjoy what they're doing, but it's never going to feel as big as it once did, just because it's always the way. Everything's got a shelf life. So I would absolutely do that. I would go in the opposite direction and have them together, but allow them to split off from one another. I think that would be fun, and I hope that they do it. Hopefully that's what this Money in the Bank thing was all about. We'll find out next Tuesday which member of the New Day is going in. So yeah, I hope they do that. Francis Reyes, what is your favourite Money in the Bank cash-in? And Cameron Johnson also asked that. I mean, the first one was good with Edge in the Elimination Chamber, right? Just because it was so unexpected and no one actually realised you could do that. Let me look it up. I mean, I need to see a list. Money in the Bank. 'Cause I think Punk's maybe one, or Daniel Bryan's. Daniel Bryan's was up there. Let's click on videos and I'll get a list. No, I won't. I'll just get top 10 lists because this is the internet that we live in. I like Daniel Bryan's. I like CM Punk's. I like Dolph Ziggler's. I think everybody likes that one. The first one was good because it was Edge. Yeah, these are all just lists. I did like Jack Swagger's just because I never thought he was going to win the title, even though I wanted him to. And then the fact that he won it as well. I'm not saying it was a good title run, but it just surprised me. And Francis, you also asked, do you think with Bobby Lashley back in WWE, we could see Jack Swagger? I didn't even see that. I don't think so. I know he's doing his MMA stuff for Bellator. I don't think he's doing much on the independent scene. I mean, maybe one day, but I don't see it. I don't see it anytime soon. And Cameron Johnson also asked, what's your favourite match stipulation? Well, the Royal Rumble, if that counts. Outside of that, when Hell in a Cell is done right, I think Hell in a Cell is brilliant. And I like a good ladder match too. That kind of ties into Money in the Bank. Andrew Pollitt, what's your favourite wrestling book autobiography? Daniel Bryan's is very good because it's honest. Same with William Regal's. He doesn't hold back. Away from that, I can't remember the name. The Death of WCW by Brian Alvarez is brilliant. Brian Alvarez in general I think he's awesome. I don't know. What he does and the day-to-day hustle, I think Wrestling Observer as a whole, but I really like Brian Alvarez. I think he's great. What is the book with Vince McMahon dressed up as a doll on the cover? Let me see if I can find that. That's the best wrestling book I've ever read because it just goes into so much detail. WWE book, Vince McMahon. It looks like a puppet, right? I mean, what a thing to type into Google. Imagine this works. Imagine this works. It didn't work. Excuse me. Oh, I've got a cough. Oh, that's not what. There you go. Sex, Lies, and Headlocks. It did work. So Sex, Lies, and Headlocks, I think, is the best. It is the best. I'm saying this out loud. I think so. It just and the Death of WCW, just because of the, amount of detail that it goes into and the amount I've learned from it. Autobiographies, I actually do enjoy the shit ones that WWE puts out because they're so easy to read. Like Brock's is easy to read, Austin's, The Rock's, Edge's. They're all just, I don't know how true they all are, Ric Flair's, but they are easy to read. I think Bret Hart has to go in there, not for the easy to read category, as one of the great ones because he goes, again, so much detail, more so than you'd ever imagine. So yeah, there's a handful. Josh Gell, how long do you think it is until Triple H takes over from Vince, and do you think the main roster product will improve? Well, without wanting to be morbid, I think Vince McMahon is going to have to die or get some kind of serious illness before he backs away. He's, 72, something like that? So 10 years probably? I wouldn't hold your breath is what I'm saying. I mean, you never know with life, but yeah. And I don't know with Triple H. I think he's very smart. I think he gets it. But, I don't have a problem with this. As much as some people do, but Triple H is as behind Roman Reigns as Vince McMahon is. So it's not like all of a sudden a lot's going to change. But hopefully it will be different. I think it would benefit from having a fresh pair of eyes or a fresh brain behind it. Just because, really, the setup of Raw and SmackDown has been the same since the Attitude Era. I mean, little things have changed, but, something like in the Attitude Era, things felt like they changed. We need that again, and someone new at the helm will help that. But yeah, I'd say a decade if I had to guess, if not more. Alex White, how long do you see Velveteen Dream staying in NXT? I would like to see him win both singles titles, at least before getting called up. I agree with you. I think there's no rush. He's young. He's like 20, 22 or something like that. We don't have to bring him up. He can do stuff in NXT. It's not like there's much crossover between the audience, so you're not going to run him down in NXT. I'd keep him there for a few more years. I don't think there's any rush. And also, that gimmick will have a shelf life too, so the longer you can keep it away from the main roster, the longer that gimmick can go. So yeah, I take my time. Nick Palmer, since Undertaker has had 2 half-decent matches when compared to the few before, do you see more Mania matches for him and against who? Well, I like the John Cena thing. I know I'm not in the majority there. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it really paced WrestleMania, which was a 5-hour-plus show. I don't necessarily need to see The Undertaker anymore. I feel like that's run its course to a certain extent. But yes, I can probably see him doing a couple more Mania matches. Against who? I mean, I don't know. That's the thing. Who's interesting? I guess you could do one against Kane, but I feel like I've seen that enough. Who's an up-and-comer that, could fill that void? Maybe we've done Bray Wyatt, so we wouldn't need to go back to that. I mean, if they could somehow build Luke Harper as a singles and do Luke Harper versus The Undertaker, I just think ever since the whole Brock Lesnar thing and the Roman Reigns thing, we don't need to see Undertaker at Mania anymore. One more match, do something big, and then you can retire. Probably Kane, I guess, if you're going to do that. But even then, I don't need to see it. Jim Calca, if Shawn Michaels is to return for one more match, which is the rumour this week, who would you like to see him face, and what other legends would you like to return for one more match? Well, if it's a dream scenario, Bret Hart, Stone Cold, Steve Austin. But I think they're both too injured and smart to ever come back. As for Shawn Michaels, like we were saying the other day, I just don't think he needs to come back. There's nothing I need to see from Shawn Michaels at this stage. He achieved everything that he wanted. He was amazing. He was great. I mean, I think if you're going to do it, like he says, we should just have some fun and we shouldn't take it too seriously. So I would, Triple H, DX thing, something like that that's just a barrel of laughs, doesn't really mean anything, isn't going to take anything away from what Shawn Michaels' legacy is, and we can all enjoy it because we get to see Shawn Michaels, back in the WWE ring. If there's a chance of him fighting someone like AJ Styles or Shinsuke Nakamura, great. But again, I don't think he'd be able to give the level of performance he wanted to, and therefore it may not necessarily work out how we want it. But in the dream world, AJ Styles, Nakamura, Rusev, Kevin Owens, all those guys against Shawn Michaels would be great, and I'm sure they'd like that as well. It's like wrestling with a childhood hero. Charlie Crowley, are you all in? I have some news on All In soon. Not that news. I'm not performing at All In, but I have some news. I'll talk about it in a month or so. Thomas Sutton, any chance we could get some wrestling merch from you? There you go, Thomas. I didn't even know you were going to ask this question. Yes. If you're coming to the show on June 17th, it should be ready then. I'm not going to sell out. Of course I'm not. That would be insane. But if I did, then you wouldn't hear about it, but I won't. I'll have some left over, and then I've got a store ready to go, and I'll let you know all the information then. So keep an eye on my Twitter at Simon316. Pierre, my man, with SmackDown going to Fox and being promoted on reputable sports, do you think the product will need to adapt to its surroundings, or do you think the same old antics will still fly? The former. I don't know this. I don't know what WWE's feelings is, but from my own personal vantage point, yes, I think SmackDown going to Fox and, knowing that football, baseball, whatever else they have, I think they have basketball too, is going to be promoted. You certainly don't want to be tuning in and seeing, because the whole point is they're going to go to Fox and get new viewers. That's what they want, right? So you don't want to tune in and get This Is Your Life segments or what else sucks? Like Sami Zayn and I know it's not SmackDown, but Sami Zayn and Bobby Lashley on Raw. You don't want stuff like that. You've got to have really good material that's going to want people to stay. And you could argue they should be doing it now, but you could also say they've kind of got a bit comfortable, which I think is true. And I think Fox is just too important for the next 5 years and going forward and the risk of being cancelled that they can't risk it. So yes, I think they actually will have to muck around. I think we'll still get some of the old nonsense because it's WWE and we always get that. But overall, I think SmackDown will be a far better written and a far better structured show, and I think that will make it a lot more interesting. I think they need 3.5 million viewers, or at least 3, from the small amount of research that I've done. And if you're American, you can tell me that's nonsense, it's fine. But that's what it seems to me. And that's a big jump. I think we're down to 2.3 this week, or something like that, 2.4. So we'll see. Ollie Smith. Al Snow has said that we as smart fans think everybody knows what we know about wrestling, but Mr. and Mrs. Walmart buy tickets to shows based on whoever is on the poster, and therefore the best pro wrestler is the one who draws the most money, not the one who has the best match. What's your take? Well, I'm never going to say anything about Al Snow because he was obviously my trainer, and not only that, he has been, well, just lovely to me, if I'm honest, since day one. I wouldn't be where I am without him, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. He will, no matter where my wrestling journey goes, I will always say thank you to Al Snow. He got me over such a hurdle, and he was just so good and kind to me. In terms of that, I think he's correct from the context that he's looking at it. If we're talking about Mr. and Mrs. Walmart, and wrestling is all about drawing money and being a draw and selling tickets. So they would be the best pro wrestler if you look at it from a business point of view. Because whoever sells the most merch, the most tickets, and makes the most money is the best pro wrestler, because, again, they're making the most cash. But there is another way to look at it, depending on your context, which is who has the best match in the ring. But, again, that's going to differ wildly from person to person, whereas you can't argue in the late 80s, Hulk Hogan was, in the context we're talking about, the best pro wrestler because he sold the most. So it's an interesting question. I like the way he talks about it. I would implore anyone to go watch any Al Snow interview. Don't have to agree with what he says, but I think you'll see he's very smart and very intelligent about it all. Just a good guy all round. Ashley Robinson Voss, your thoughts on Johnny Sate being named GM of the UK? I think he's awesome. As soon as I saw it, I thought, how exciting, how brilliant. I love it. I think hopefully they'll push this hard. I think that'll be good for everybody. Ollie Smith, do you think smart fans are ruining wrestling for kids? We all got hooked on wrestling in our youth, and it's something that has stuck with us, or we left and returned to as we got older, as the older fans at risk of putting it off. Are the older fans at risk of putting off younger fans by our constant whining and bitching and thinking we know better just because we've smartened up to some extent? Well, to a certain degree, but I don't think kids are necessarily exposed to that. I mean, they are if they're going on stuff like Squared Circle. But again, I think you have to offset that with the amazingness that the internet is. They may not even be interesting if it wasn't for the internet. And, thanks to social media, we now get to see all these products from all over the world. So if the payoff or the compromise of that is you get sort of arsey fans ruining it, I don't think it's a problem. Because I think the arsiness, kids can stay away from that. I know some kids that watch wrestling. My mate's kids watch wrestling. And they don't know about any of that. They just like Roman Reigns because he does a Superman punch and he does a spear and it looks good. That's it. They don't know about all the nonsense that goes around it. I do think, for example, the WrestleMania 34 main event, no, some people there that night didn't give it a chance. That, to me, does ruin wrestling. And I imagine if you're a kid in the crowd, then, yeah, you may just want to enjoy it. But I just think the business model is different nowadays. It's not even about demographics. I know you've got a bit there, Ollie, about demographics and stuff. But it's not even about that because they've got so much money now, they can do nothing. They could put on the same show for 5 years and they're getting $2 billion regardless, which is going to break all company records. It's not a good long-term strategy. The fans should always come first. They did a video on What Culture about that, which you should go watch. That was my Simon Says video. Not a lot of people watched that. Everyone go watch my Simon Says video on What Culture. I didn't do as well as I'd hoped. I was sad. But I think it's just a different business. Things evolve, things change. Maybe maybe it was better for us when we were kids. But, social media and the internet and smart fans talking about it still opened the doors in other respects as well. Nevin A. Marion, if you had to pick one artist to write your theme song, who would it be? Metallica. Easy. Never happened, but yeah. Sachin Christian, I asked this question before, but I haven't heard it answered. If you have, I'm sorry. Don't you worry about it, my man. Is this over a saturation of the main roster doing more harm than good? The US champion can't find a spot on SmackDown for 2 weeks, and it took weeks before people noticed AOP had been missing. I just think storylines aren't being thought out as well as they could be, and there's a lot of faff and fluff sometimes on the shows, whereas really we need to think about that more. So I don't think you can ever have too many good wrestlers. That's a wonderful problem to have. It's like a football player, football team having too many good players. And it's the way they're managed. And in this sense, yeah, it's the way they're booked and the stories they get. So no, but they do need to do better with what they have. Question 2, why, slaps head, like it, can NXT, which only has a 1 hour tape show a week, and to a lesser extent 205 Live, build better characters and storylines? Oh, hang on, I'm getting confused. So can NXT and 205 Live build better characters and storylines? Blah, blah, blah. So basically, yeah, can the shorter show do better than... Again, it all depends on what the story is. Like, if I do a 1 hour podcast and I'm talking about everything to do with, I don't know, CM Punk and the way he left the WWE, and it's really, let's say it's really boring. It's really boring, and you were 20 minutes in, I'm not saying anything, and it's dull. Or you go and listen to something like The Laps Fan, which sometimes does 8 hours of podcasting, but they go into the nitty-gritty. It's all about captivating your interest, and you can do that in 5 minutes, and you can do that in 5 hours. It all depends on the approach. So yeah, it can do. NXT and 205 Live could certainly do better than Raw and SmackDown that do have 5 hours a week plus pay-per-views, but it all depends on the stories. It all depends on the stories. I think if Raw had gone to 3 hours during the Attitude Era, I know we look back now and it's different, but again, at the time people loved it, the ratings still would have been fine, as they were on Nitro when they went to 3 hours. So it really does come down to creativity. If something's creative and interesting, you're going to watch, even though 3 hours is way too long. Christopher Brown, should the dual brand pay-per-views be used to tell cross-brand stories? It's a sentence. That way you can have a few killer promos, but wouldn't end up having the match too many times. The match would always feel big, and you could phase out the Universal Championship and have the WWE Championship float between brands. Well, I completely agree with that last bit. I totally don't like the idea of having 2 world championships, mostly because every now and then I do sort of somehow manage to get people into wrestling, and usually their first question is, why is there 2 world champions? That doesn't make any sense, and they're 100% correct. So, yeah, I would have 1 world champion just because it makes more sense if you're trying to make this thing believability. As for cross-brand stories, I can't say that. Cross-brand stories. What? I'm going nuts. Maybe I'm about to have an aneurysm. Is that offensive? Maybe. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, we can do that, but again, it's all about moderation. You don't want to do it all the time because people will get used to it, but then it is a great way to make people buy in. So yes, they should do that, and they should also do really good stories and killer promos on the same brand, but they don't do that sometimes either. Ben Ward, my man, at WrestleMania 35, it's Simon Miller versus which 3 wrestlers from history in their prime in a fatal 4-way, and which stipulation would you choose? Well, I guess I'd want to fight so it'd be Triple H, Bret Hart, and Steve Austin, because they're the 3 wrestlers that had a big impact on me when I was a kid, for reasons we've gone in before. I mean, a fatal 4-way, I don't necessarily think you need another stipulation. I'd like a singles match, but if we had to, I guess some kind of elimination. A fatal 4-way is not elimination. I don't know. I keep it singles. I think I keep it singles and just, try and make it work that way. But yeah, I'd want to wrestle the heroes from my childhood, and it would be those 3. I mean, obviously Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man before that, but in my really sort of formative years, when I was going through a lot of nonsense in school, yeah, definitely those 3. David Ayres, how much do you dislike Drake? Well, legitimately, I don't like him at all. People seem to think, we had a Twitter beef the other day, and people now think it's all jokes and stuff, but all I say is this. How do I phrase this? I don't want to give, I don't want to cross the line, but all I say is I was meant to be hit in the back with a chair. That's all I say. I'll leave it there. But no, I don't like him, and it's a shame, given that this is I'm only 2 matches in, and certain things were agreed upon. But whatever. It's all good. I get a week Sunday, right? A week Sunday. That's all I say. Week Sunday. Navid Ali, after continually failing with Roman Reigns, do you think WWE will ever consider someone else to take his place, like Rollins, Ambrose, or maybe Kenny Omega? No. I mean, if someone else new comes along and they like him, yes. But Rollins has his place, Ambrose has his place, and if Kenny Omega came in, I just can't see it. I can't see him ever being used in the way that we'd want to see him used, much like, I'm not saying they're on the same level, but much like, Bobby Lashley didn't get used in the way we thought he would be, nor did, what do you call it? Kurt Angle. Why can't I remember his name? His name just vanished from me. Nor could Kurt Angle. It's just these people lost their quote-unquote specialness, relatively quickly. And a large reason for that is the way that WWE booked them, and I don't think they do anything different from Kenny Omega. Doesn't mean a new guy can't come up, though. A new guy could absolutely come back at some point. Not come back. Sorry, I was distracted by someone at my door who was looking through like a weirdo, and it turned out to be the postman. And if a new guy comes along and catches Vince McMahon's attention, then yeah, that's it. Could all change. It could all change tomorrow. That's both the beauty and the detriment of WWE. Sorry about that. Someone was just looking through my door, and I was like, are you coming in? So they walked off. Garth Jackson, say you were signed to WWE and given total freedom over your booking. Who would you love to run a program with, and how would you play it out? Well, put me against Roman Reigns and put me over. Instantly, all the fans love me. So I do that. Right now, I think that would be the best thing ever. And people would be like, great. This guy just came in and smashed Roman Reigns. So yeah, that's absolutely what I would do. Then I make myself champion, and I'd win the Royal Rumble, and I'd put myself in a Survivor Series match, 1-on-5, and I'd win. Kevin Nash, WCW. Chris Davey, what are your least favourite finishers, and is it your band performing the podcast outro music? No, it's not it's not that, no. Without wanting to sound like too much of a shill, if you are a member of the Patreon, you can get access to the outro music to the podcast. It'll be in one of the threads. If you can't find it, just message me and I'll send it to you. Least favourite finishers. The AA, just because it's been watered down so much. I think John Cena probably needs to, and the STFU, just because it never looks like it hurts. Otherwise, I think I didn't like the knee to face that Rollins was doing, but he's back to doing the curb stop now, so that's good. Braun, everything he does is awesome. I can't think of a finisher I don't like. No, just those two. My man, Adam Pearson, if your character were to ever die, would he come back as a luchador? Don't be preposterous. Who would book that? Who would book that story, Adam? That sounds ridiculous. Shout out to Miller Report fans. Dale Nickel, will you have my babies? I would do if I wanted kids, but I don't want kids. So, no. But if you ever do have babies, I will bless them. I don't know what that means. Adam Rogers, Simon, if you were hired as a jobber to get squashed in a match to get someone over, who would you want to be squashed by? Damn it, I was about to say Braun Strowman, but you then say established names like Strowman don't count. In that case, Kurt Hawkins. I can be the man that Kurt Hawkins beats to get his losing streak over and his winning streak started. I love Kurt Hawkins. Said this on Ups and Downs this week. He's brilliant. Everyone go tweet him and tell him how awesome he is. So yeah, I can do that, and then I'm tied into a story as well. Even if I never get seen again, at least I made an impact. And that's what it's all about. Richard Cadman, what is your opinion of the banning of pile drivers in the WWE? A worthy precaution or unnecessarily cautious? Well, I said well at the start of a lot of these answers, don't know why. As a lot of people often tell me on Twitter, they start by calling me a CUNT, and then tell me they think it's preposterous that I once made a video for What Culture where I said I think health and safety is the most important thing of all of pro wrestling, and we should just use fake blood. Now, I would explain that. One, because if you're getting hurt, it's not worth it. So that's why I'm fine with pile drivers being banned. I don't want to see anyone being hurt. I don't find it fun, although it is a cool mood. As the fake blood things come up, the way I've always seen it is like this. When you cut yourself, all the smart fans in the crowd will go, well, I mean, in this day and age, they'll question whether you quote-unquote bladed or whether it's fake. So they don't believe you. So you've bladed for no reason because they are always going to question whether you did it or not. The other half, let's say are casual fans, they don't know about blading, so they're just going to see blood and think it's real. So if you use fake blood, all the smart fans are going to react to you regardless whether you cut your head open or not, because that's what we do. And casual fans don't know about that, so they just think you're bleeding. So just use fake blood, because that way you're protecting yourself. That's how I see it anyway. Richard Powell, favourite bald wrestler? Me. No, that's a joke. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Jose Martinez, good name. What would you do as a wrestler if you were in Roman's place in WWE? I do exactly what he's doing. I understand all the Roman backlash, but he's a science project. He's doing stuff that no one has not ever done. That's probably a bit extreme, but he's going to be talked about forever. He's making loads of money. He does have a following in some areas. If I was a wrestler, I would just do what I was told by the company. I think one thing that I've learned from my 30-odd years experience on this earth is sometimes it's worth just playing the game. And in that sense, I think Roman's doing very well. Yeah. I wouldn't change a thing if I was him. Maybe you can suggest things, but if they say no... Look, would I take Roman's place right now? Of course I would. I think we all would. He's living the dream. Josh Tilbury, will we ever see the punt again? I don't think so. That seems to be worse than the curb stomp. So I'll say no, but I liked it. And then 2 from my man Charlie Esparza. Has WWE rested on its laurels lately because it feels like... Hang on. Right, sorry, start again. Has WWE rested on its laurels lately? Take Backlash, for example, and all the Money in the Bank rematches. It seems like they aren't trying or caring, so neither should the consumer. Thoughts? And do you recommend if a person gets bored with current wrestling products, should they pursue wrestling as a career? Well, yeah, because doing wrestling is completely different to watching wrestling. If anything, it may spark your passion for it again. I mean, I certainly wasn't out of passion with it. Not a phrase, not a quote, not a sentence. But I loved doing it, and I love watching it, and I always sort of act... In fact, I probably like it more now because I wrestle, so I now watch it in a different way. So, yeah, you should do. I think you should do it anyway. Just try. If you don't like it, at least you know. I think WWE rests on its laurels during this period of the year because we're in the WrestleMania lull, and then things will slowly pick up as we go back into SummerSlam. They shouldn't do that. You're right. Sometimes it does feel like they don't care, so why should you? I say that all the time on Ups and Downs. That is bad. But I guess that's the nature of the beast. It's cyclical and goes up and down. Nick Ams, I know you are still training for wrestling and it's a constant process of development, but do you ever see yourself going off the turnbuckle for a high-flying maneuver? Is it something that interests you? Look, I'd do it if I could. I'd just be more worried about killing someone. So no, I probably won't. But you don't know what the situation is going to call for. If there's something I think I can do safely and it's going to look good and it's going to tie into the story, then yes, I'll do it. I'll never say no to anything other than the super, super crazy hardcore stuff. I know right now I've got a wound in the back of my head, so that seems a little bit hypocritical, but I don't want light bulbs smashed. It's just not me. I would never do that. And I am older than the average bear, so I do have to be a bit smarter. Lee Morris, do you think WWE are reluctant to have massively over stars? They don't want another situation where performers can demand more money or no show like Ultimate Warrior. I feel whenever anyone is becoming huge, IG Elias and now perhaps Drew McIntyre, WWE have them lose a couple of times to dim their stardom to keep them under control. What are your thoughts on this? I think there's a certain amount of truth to that, in the sense, well, more so that we don't really have stars anymore, and WWE is the star. The brand is the star. People go to WrestleMania and buy tickets for the experience. They don't really care who's on the card. So I do think there's a little bit of complacency by WWE that thinks, well, we don't need to push people. And yes, I'd imagine they are worried about that because it's happened time and time again. I mean, I think Brock Lesnar is the ultimate one. I think that's where it started. They put all the money and all the tools behind Brock Lesnar, and then he left. And it's like, right, well, we've just, sunk finances and plans into you, and now you're not here anymore. What do you expect us to do? So I think that's where it started. Under control, not necessarily. Like if somebody did blow up like Stone Cold Steve Austin, that helps everybody involved. So no, I don't think necessarily they're doing it that way. But I do think there's a mentality of let's keep an eye on it, just in case, it doesn't work out in the way that we necessarily want it to. And I do. I think that I did start with Brock Lesnar. But I don't think they should go all the way with that, just because that's bad for the company. So yes and no. It's a yes and no situation. I don't think they've done anything like that to Drew McIntyre at the moment. And Elias is stuck in mid-card 50-50 booking. I don't think that's them trying to keep him down. That's just the WWE at the moment because they don't push people properly. But that's a different question entirely. And that's that. That's all the questions. There's a lot this week. Thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing them all. Dominion tomorrow, obviously. So make sure you come back and check out that podcast on Tuesday. Then we'll wrap everything up on Wednesday. And then we'll do another Q&A on Friday. We'll do one after that, talking about my third ever wrestling match, which again is happening on Newcastle on June 17th. I feel like Colt Cabana, I can never say his name. Now I can hock my matches on my podcast. What a great world we live in. Isn't it wonderful? And if anybody ever can make it down to a match, let me know. And, I'll make sure I come out the way to see you and say hello. I should be there. Well, I will be there before every match is doing the whole gimmick table nonsense. And yes, merchandise. I should have something to talk about next week or the week after that. Fingers crossed. And I'm getting 8x10s done because I'm a real wrestler now. This is all on the advice of everybody else. I'll just let you know. But thank you as always for listening. Again, join the Facebook group, Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. Got about 1,100 members in there now, which is great. Share the podcast, be it on that Reddit or Twitter or Facebook. I'd love to blow the numbers up as big as we can. YouTube.com/The Miller Report rules for nonsense YouTube videos. Rock Reacts if you want to see me and my man John Denton reacting to all kinds of music. Twitter at SimonMiller316, Instagram SimonMiller316, bunch of dumb pictures on there. And of course, if you can support me in any way, even $1, it's no, it's not. It's patreon.com/SimonMiller316. What is wrong with me? My head still hurts. Doesn't actually. It's okay now. Got it all sorted out the other day. The washing machine's going nuts now too, so if you didn't hear it before, you probably can hear it now. So yeah, loads of podcasts next week. Make sure you check out the one from a couple of days ago. If you are a patron and you believe that you don't have a date for your podcast, make sure you drop me a line. I want to get everybody on. And that's it really. Have a great weekend. If you listen to this over the weekend, I hope it's smashing it. Enjoy Dominion. No other wrestling this week, I don't think, but just have fun, and I'll talk to you again soon.